This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. On today's episode, we've got a massive amount of news, rumors, speculation. What the hell's going on in WWE? We got to break it all down. Is Cody the guy of the WWE future? We're going to discuss that. What Becky Lynch actually did to Dana Brooke, we're going to talk about that. What the hell's going on with Jeff Hardy? You know, we got the lowdown with all of that as well. But I think the biggest thing coming out of this week in wrestling is what's going on in WWE, what's going on with Vince McMahon. It's something that has dominated and populated all of the wrestling conversations this week. Doing it with me, as always, he's the guy who's here to help me break it all down, because I'm going to be honest with you, my head is spinning with all the information coming out. He's the one, he's the only, he is the Doc, John Macroon. What's up, cuz?
The Doc has arrived, and all of you can turn up the volume, baby. Turn up that volume. Here's what you do. You're on your iPhone, you got your headphones in. Turn up that button, baby, all the way, because we got a lot to talk about. I enjoyed this week of wrestling. I don't know if it was because I was going so hard at work in multiple arenas that I came home and wanted to be entertained. I'm not into the NHL finals. I'm not really into the NBA. So I enjoyed every single episode of wrestling this week. Now, did I like everything? No. But did all the news that surfaced excite me, get me excited to record this podcast now that we're 11 days or so away from Blood and Guts? Hell yeah. So much to get into. Adam's the man, going to break it all down too. But boy, Vince McMahon has really outdone himself this time, getting himself in the news. And then the reaction on a lot of levels was par for the course, but I think it turned a lot of people off. In that, you don't really typically see large media companies turn off the comments on YouTube videos that they post. WWE took the step of posting what Vince said on YouTube in that quick 2-minute segment that he did arrive on, but turned off the comments. And then typically in WWE videos, you see a lot of likes in their videos. The ratio of likes to dislikes is really proportionally in their favor, but many more people disliked Vince McMahon's appearance. And I think at this point in time, it might signal the end, whether he's guilty or not. Now, me personally, I've kind of over the years taken the stance when this kind of thing happens with professional athletes or others as well. There's two sides to the story, and there's always a lot of facts that are not really reported on. So I always take the innocent until proven guilty route. But at this point in time, when you look at it, if Vince and his wife do not have a happy marriage or things like that, why not just get divorced? Why not end it instead of having this public charade that potentially is happening? Because technically, in the way in which a lot of people believe, affairs are wrong when you are married to someone. So in that vein, you know, you can come out and say, well, it's Vince, we all knew it, and things like that. But bottom line, it goes into the dynamic that we can agree or disagree upon, is whether a man of his position should be engaging in relations with subordinates. Me personally, I can't knock it other than the fact that he's married, which makes it wrong. But look, men in power have availabilities that nobody can understand. And if you aren't in that position, it's really tough to speak on when you know you walk around and maybe someone's just sexually attracted to you because you're powerful. There's an allure to that. There's a psychological variant to that where powerful men have this kind of situation that develops in their ego that allows them to kind of justify or rationalize whatever it is they're thinking. And bottom line, when you own a company, you do have to follow rules. And I'm curious to see where some of that alleged money that went, where did it come from? Because if it's a consensual relationship where he paid it off to not have it come out, that's all legal. That's not illegal. The aspect that will get him in trouble is the notion, did he really, in fact, pay this woman for purposes other than the work that she was doing? If that can be proven through emails, text, then Vince's career is over. But the man's 77 years old. You're not going to cancel him. He's got $1 billion. He's given it to his children. And For me, I just probably would not have had Vince McMahon show up on SmackDown to pull a rating. It's par for the course for what they do, but it is crazy to think that many people like myself thought he was actually going to talk about it. That was crazy to think that. But man, the Vince McMahon story is crazy, and it goes to show you, men in power just have a hard time with that one variant that's undefeated. It's very hard, especially when you're married, and it's just a huge component. In my psychology practice, we talk about it a lot in couples therapy. It's a huge aspect. Communication, intimacy, those are the two big ones. And if one is lacking, the man's going to start slacking, start shacking with somebody else. That's the way it goes.
All right, so just to give a little bit of insight as to everything John just kind of broke down. So earlier this week, there was an article released by the New York Times that came out and reported on the Wall Street Journal reported on a investigation that was taking place with the WWE board regarding Mr. McMahon. In the report, it was discovered that Mr. McMahon had a paralegal that was making $100,000 a year. Her salary got increased to $200,000 a year, and they were having a consensual relationship. And what ended up happening was they ended up stopping their consensual relationship, and Vince basically paid her off to go away and paid her $3 million. Now, the money is reported to come out of his own personal funds, not out of company funds. So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the company. Where this gets into a little bit of a legal loophole, a little bit of legal jargon, is in Vince's contract, there is a quid pro quo referendum where it basically states that you won't give anybody money or give anybody a position based on a sexual relationship. And that's kind of what this sounds like there was. Now, the story goes on to basically state that Vince McMahon ended up handing over the paralegal to John Laurinaitis so he could do whatever he wants to do with the paralegal. Now, John Laurinaitis, obviously, in a relationship with the Bella twins' mother. So that makes things a little bit more convoluted and a little bit more messy. And the big surprising thing was on Friday, it was announced that Vince has been removed and is stepping down as CEO and chairman of the WWE. Stephanie McMahon will now slot in as the interim CEO and chairman of WWE. To make this even more messy, remember, Stephanie just stepped aside from WWE so she could take some time off. The thought is everybody on the board knew Stephanie was part of that board. The thought is she stepped down so she wouldn't have to have any dealings with this. Now, her coming back, she's basically cleaning the mess up for her father. Now, it becomes more of an issue of, is there an actual legal issue here? Well, it doesn't really seem like there is, because both sides signed a disclosure where they can't speak about this. Is there a morality issue? Yeah, possibly, because it seems like Vince paid her a bunch of money to go away. Also, it seems like he increased her pay once they started having sex. And that is the big issue that could get Vince ousted from WWE. So again, not necessarily a legal issue, but it does impact his contract, and there is a bit of a morality issue. Also, Vince and Linda McMahon have been separated for years. They're technically married, but they have been separated for years. I don't even think they live in the same house anymore. So him going around and sleeping with somebody else, not necessarily a big issue here, because him and Linda have worked out some type of agreement. And I think when you're this rich and you both have so much invested in a company, it is sometimes easier just to stay together, but you guys kind of go your own separate ways than getting a divorce and having to break everything up. So I think for them, they're still technically by law married, but they are no longer in a relationship with each other, at least not in that regard. It is all business. So I don't think Vince technically did anything morally wrong there either, as long as him and Linda have agreed to what it is that their relationship is. It really just comes down to, did he break his contract by giving this woman a raise after having sex with her? That's kind of what it seems to intimate here. That's what this report intimates. And the thing is, it's really weird because Vince has weathered so many storms. Vince right now is in a lawsuit with Andrew Luck over the XFL for $23 million. Vince weathered the whole steroids era. Vince weathered the whole Chris Benoit situation. Vince has been involved in such high profile, high impact situations. You've never seen Vince McMahon step down as CEO and chairman of WWE during those situations, though. To me, what this is signaling with Vince stepping down, I think Vince realizes this is his last swan song. Vince is 77 years old. He looked like the freaking Crypt Creeper on SmackDown. He looked horrible. I think Vince is acknowledging he's done. He's stepping down. And I think Vince is acknowledging that this is no longer his company ran by only him. Now, I know he owns the majority of the shares of the stock. And at any time, Vince, if he really wanted to, he could probably pull the carpet out and he could probably take everything right back over. We both know he's incredibly rich. I think Vince realizes that he's not going to be able to get out of this one. I think Vince realizes he messed up with his contract by giving her that extra $100,000 a year while she was working when they started having sex. And I think that is going to be the undoing of Vince McMahon. I think this is his way to ease that transition. He is stepping aside. Stephanie now steps in. It will be her company. She will be the one running it. Vince is going to kind of fade into the distance, I think is how it will work. Now, Vince staying on for creative measures, and I thought it was a little bit distasteful, like you said, for Vince to go on to SmackDown and to basically take 2 minutes. A minute of that was him walking down, and for them to pop a rating, for him to basically go through the whole WWE, then now forever together. And he like lingered on the word together, which was a little distasteful in my estimation. But it was one of those things where I don't know what we were expecting. Like I wasn't expecting him to address any of this. Were you were expecting him to come out and to kind of address the situation?
I mean, in those things, you kind of think about spinning it in a way where you just say like you don't say it, but you don't say it. You allude to it, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. I wanted to hear him say it.
You probably wanted it. I mean, I wanted him to come on and say something of note too. Just anything. Just kind of give us a glimpse as to what the hell's going on. But at the same point, remember,
the way I would have put it was
you have attorneys involved.
Yeah. The way I would have put it was he could like you said in preface that you could have said the likes of, in 40 years, many people have come after me, and in the end, I'll stand tall like I am in this ring. Goodbye. Something like that. You know what I mean? Not alluding to it, but alluding to it.
Right. In the end, he doesn't say anything. And you're right. The comments on social media were crazy last night. It was absolutely bonkers. I was going through I ended up watching about an hour delayed because I ended up going out for dinner last night. So I got caught up to the main event when Riddle took on Roman Reigns, and I watched it, and then after that, I just kind of fast forwarded through a lot of different stuff because I didn't think SmackDown was a show worth note until the very, very end. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in our WWE segment here. But going through social media, fans were pissed. And that's why they ended up taking the comments off of the YouTube, because I don't think they want that backlash. I don't think they want to have to deal with that, because fans were rightfully upset. They felt like it was distasteful. They felt like it was totally disrespectful. And I'm kind of in agreement with that. I felt like it was a little bit disrespectful. I felt like it was a little distasteful. Now, where do we go from here? I don't know, because it seems like everybody agreed, both parties agreed to the separation, and it sounds like it is a friend of the female paralegal who is kind of stirring the pot here and really raising the stink and really sent everything to the board. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how this plays out. Did you have any other comments or any other thoughts on this Vince McMahon out as CEO situation?
I mean, the part that I think is most relevant is through this time until further notice, Vince is still in control of creative. Yeah. Hence, we saw what we saw this week.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess that's a great pivot point for what we got on Monday Night Raw. Now, I thought Raw was a really good 2-hour show that was made into a 3-hour show. I thought we had a great opening. I thought we had a really good first match, and I thought we had a fantastic match between AJ Styles and Seth Rollins. You probably could have closed the show right there, but they ended up extending this out for another hour, which leads to us having a shit ending with a pose-off between Bobby Lashley and Austin Theory. We're having a bodybuilding pose-off between two wrestlers to end what is your premier show. If that doesn't tell you what you need to know about creative, I don't know what does. Really and truly, your match between AJ Styles and Seth Rollins to qualify for Money in the Bank should have been the match to end the evening. Instead, we end up with this Bobby Lashley, Austin Theory pose off. It's what it was. I don't know where the hell we're going with this because we've got John Cena coming back. So Austin Theory's next match is his next big match is going to be between John Cena and Austin Theory, and I'm assuming that's taking place at Money in the Bank. I mean, it could be a SummerSlam match, but I'm not 100% sure. That's where Austin Theory's going. So why we're doing this thing with Bobby Lashley doesn't make any sense to me. But I think the big thing coming out of Monday Night Raw was, should Seth Rollins be your Money in the Bank winner? Because, again, remember, we've got both titles on one man. That's Roman Reigns. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But should Seth Rollins win the Money in the Bank match? Because I think that could set something up very, very interesting down the road with Roman Reigns.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's the best. He's the top draw. He's the one that has a lot of heat. Absolutely. I just don't see anybody on that level that, I mean, you look at it and you say, usually it's kind of reserved for maybe that second tier guy, not the top guy. But in this situation, when you're so starved for storylines, starved for attention, I think Seth Rollins just has to have it. And I think it'll maybe even, be a situation in which Seth can hold it for a long period of time and not cash it in until very late in the process. So I think Mr. Money in the Bank should be Seth Rollins.
Yeah, and I think what it does too is WWE finds themselves in a bit of a situation here. All of a sudden, Cody Rhodes, your number one babyface, he's gone from the company. You don't have him. He's injured, and he's going to be out for a while. You don't really have that premier babyface, that guy who has that heat right now. I feel like AJ Styles could be that guy, but it doesn't seem like WWE's interested in really giving him that type of push. Finn Balor could have been that guy, but again, WWE's not interested in giving him that type of push. Instead, they put him in Judgment Day, and they've turned him heel. So what do you really have going on here? Seth Rollins is one of the most over wrestlers right now, and he has given you some of the best matches lately. Seth Rollins is a guy who could win the Money in the Bank. And again, remember, you have this awesome storyline with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. You have this awesome history that you could really pull off of, and you could make something spectacular with. Remember, Seth Rollins has won Money in the Bank before. Seth Rollins has cashed in before. You've got all of that to help flesh out part of this story. I mean, you could do a shit ton with Seth Rollins winning the Money in the Bank match and being the guy to challenge and possibly dethrone Roman Reigns. Now, speaking of Roman Reigns, he had a match against Riddle on Friday Night SmackDown and ends up beating Riddle. I don't think any of us were really surprised. This was one of those things where I don't know. I thought it was a good match. I wasn't really into it though because I knew how this was going to end. What I was not prepared for was what took place in the final 90 seconds. Brock Lesnar ends up showing up. And Brock is back, baby. Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. We're going to get it for the 2300th time. But Brock's back as the babyface. Ends up giving an F5 to Roman Reigns. Pretends like he's going to shake his hand. Does not shake his hand. Ends up F5ing everybody in the bloodline except for Paul Heyman. What did you make of Brock Lesnar coming back?
Okay, it was a good surprise, but I don't want to see it. It's just, again...
Because we've seen it 100,000 times, right?
Nobody wants to see it. I mean, what are you going to do? Okay, Brock wins it. He's had the title before. He's not the most over guy. He's a part-time guy. He's not the most deserving. So I look at it and I say...
You do realize if Brock Lesnar was to take one of the belts off of Roman Reigns, both of your belts would then be held by part-time wrestlers?
Yeah.
Because at this point, Roman Reigns is a part-time wrestler. Also, I want to talk about this. I want to throw this out there. I want to get your opinions. Roman Reigns, when he was chasing the belts and when he was on all the time, he looked like he was in the best shape of his life. Roman Reigns showed up on SmackDown, and he looked soft. He looked a little bit doughy. And look, that's me saying this, and I'm a little bit doughy. He looked a little bit doughy. What did you think about that before you finish on what you're saying with Brock?
Yeah, you could tell because you could see there was that one angle that kind of revealed a little bit of that fat that hung over his tights that we're not used to seeing. That was a little bit more muscular in the past, but he's part-time. I mean, look. Bottom line, Roman Reigns has been there for so long. You hit that crescendo in your career. He said it. What's next? He's cleared everybody out. So there's a problem that has inherently been created, which also should speak to his greatness. I mean, at this point in time, I don't even want Brock Lesnar to defeat Roman. Let him keep it for 3 years until there's somebody worthy, probably Cody Rhodes, probably Seth Rollins, or Kevin Owens, one of those three. There's nobody else worthy of holding the title. So at that point in time, look, they just need a feud. It is what it is. I'll barely pay attention to it. I'm not paying attention to that at the moment. And all I can say is it's a rehash of something we've already seen. And it goes to show you that right now, you just can't create stars that quickly. So that's what they've gone to. Kudos to Brock Lesnar. He's cashing in on WWE's failed opportunities to, on numerous occasions, create top-end stars. Roman Reigns said it, encapsulated it in his sentence. I've cleared everybody out. I've cleared everybody out, and I'm ready to leave. So that's what should happen, is that focus on Gunther, focus on other people, focus on Seth Rollins, AJ Styles, Judgment Day, the women. Focus on something else, because I'm not interested in Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar 10,000th edition. It's done. It's played out.
Doesn't it feel like, this is what it feels like to me. It feels like WWE was kind of set into a spiral when Cody went down with an injury. I felt like Seth's spot in Money in the Bank was meant for Cody. I felt like Cody winning Money in the Bank sets him up to chase Roman Reigns. And I feel like that was the storyline that they were going for. That was what they wanted, because Cody Rhodes had built himself up in a very short amount of time to be this mega babyface, the one guy who could stand up to Roman Reigns and challenge him, and it would feel real. It would feel like he had a legit shot to win that match. And then Cody goes down, and it's like, okay, well, what do we do? You start moving pieces around the chessboard, and it just kind of messes things up a little bit. Sometimes you get a little bit too active and a little bit too involved, and what happens is it really skews everything else that's going on. When you take a step back and you look at it, you're like, we probably only had to make one, maybe two moves. Instead, they ended up making 5 moves, and now you got Seth in the Money in the Bank, which, again, we both agree is a fine thing. It's a good thing. We can do something good here. But now you got to bring Brock back on his crazy paycheck. You've messed up the Judgment Day. Edge is out currently. You've got Finn Balor, who could have been a babyface, who the fans were behind, whether you realize it or not, whether you were behind him or not, the fans were behind him. You could have did something with Finn Balor. He's now a heel. AJ Styles left in the wind, and you just kind of have pieces just kind of floating everywhere, and it just seems and feels really, really messy. This is what's bad about the way WWE does things. They don't ever let that one star rise to that pinnacle. They try to keep everybody kind of in this box and kind of keep you on your tiers. And then what happens is they don't ever really develop anybody new or really push anybody. Like Austin Theory is the guy that they're pushing. He is the guy that they are trying to build. But like you said, you can't build them overnight. It doesn't happen that way. There's got to be something organic that takes place so the crowd can connect with them and the crowd can get behind them. There has to be that moment. And it takes a little bit to sometimes build those moments, and it's putting wrestlers in spots where they can have a situation take place to build that moment. And WWE right now just really feels like it is spinning around trying to figure out what to do with Roman Reigns, because they put these belts on him, and now it seems like they kind of want to get them off, or they've got to do something to try to at least make it relevant again, because it's really not. You want to give us your review of Impact this week?
Absolutely. We're on the verge of Slammiversary, which is going to take place June 19th, today, as you guys download this podcast episode. And it's the 20th anniversary celebration. It should have a lot of impact moving forward regarding how everything should go down. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in Rich Swann taking on Brian Myers, the Briscoes taking on the Good Brothers. I think a lot of people are also interested in the Impact World Championship match between Josh Alexander and Eric Young. The Monsters Ball match between Moose and Sami Callihan, I think, will be awesome. And then the match I think that could steal the show is the Ultimate X match for the Impact X Division Championship. You'll have the champ, Ace Austin, versus Trey Miguel, versus Kenny King, versus Mike Bailey, Jack Evans, and Alex Zane. So this episode of Impact really kind of got you in the mood. Give you a little taste of Slammiversary. And it started off pretty well, I thought, with you had a great match. You had a great matchup with Tasha Steelz and Savannah Evans taking on Jordynne Grace and Mia Yim. you move on, and it was a good match. Trey Miguel took on Speedball and Mike Bailey. I thought a couple things highlighted to me was the emergence of Masha Slamovich taking on Alicia Edwards. Slamovich is moving up the ranks, and many more people are commenting that she's great, but she's got to start to now move up the ranks and start taking on better competition. She scored the victory over Alicia Edwards. The highlight for me, the best part of the show, and of course, every wrestling company has the contract signing, and so of course you had Eric Young and Alexander doing their thing, the pose off and all that kind of stuff to get you hyped up. The two matches that if you only have time to kind of browse through Impact this week, the Briscoe brothers took on Jay White and Chris Bay. You had to protect Jay White. You're not going to have a star of that caliber, and we'll talk about that further later on, lose and get pinned. But you have them, that tag team loses. Chris Bay has been taking the brunt of the losses, and the Briscoe brothers really stand tall at Impact at this moment in time. And then you had Honor No More taking on the returning Aces and Eights. And it was fine with what it was, with Bischoff and Briscoe getting some shine before the heels scored the victory, as they should have. I think that back in the day when you saw Aces and Eights, it had so much nostalgia with a lot of the members that were there. So it was cool to see moving forward. But Slammiversary is upcoming. Check it out. They do a good job. Always promises to have some returns, some surprises, and a lot of good things that will happen. I think that in the main event, in the final segment, with Alexander attempting to remind Young of who he was back in the day and reminding everybody that he has a really strong potential of being something special in this company. So I think that, the potential strong match that they could have at Slammiversary was definitely highlighted, and I think they did a good job. Good go-home show, rated a B+. If, like I said, watch those two matches if you don't have too much time, but the go-home show ahead of Slammiversary was real solid for Impact.
Slammiversary looks like it's going to be a really, really good show this weekend. You get a chance to check it out, Fight TV. If you have access to a stream, watch it there. We always promote the streams. But it should be a really, really good show. Looks like Impact, again, doing really great things, and you get this nice crossover with a lot of these guys. New Japan's involved, AEW's involved. Impact has really become a great breeding ground for a myriad of talents from different organizations. Also, some people who couldn't make it in WWE or WWE didn't see anything in them, they can go back to Impact and they can do some great things. Mia Yim's one of them. She's fantastic. She really is. She's fantastic. And Impact gives her a spot where she can really highlight herself, so it's great. Now, speaking of AEW, I thought we had a pretty fantastic Dynamite. Thought we had a pretty good Rampage. Blood and Guts is looking incredible. And the reason I bring up Blood and Guts is because you and I will be at Blood and Guts, and we're going to take it all in live. We're going to Little Caesars Arena. We're going to watch it. Sammy Guevara joins the JSA and is now incorporated in a Blood and Guts match. What did you think of Sammy Guevara basically showing up as Fuego del Sol and hitting Ortiz in the head with the bat? And all of a sudden, Sammy Guevara is now back with Chris Jericho. Like, he was the first guy to defect from the original organization that Chris Jericho had, and now he's back in the mix. And I just, to me, that was a little bit shocking, but it makes all the sense in the world.
I mean, again, it's something that's gone back and forth with where do Sammy Guevara's loyalty lie? Well, it's back with Chris Jericho. Okay, fine. Really,
you sound so frustrated by this right now.
Yeah, I think Sammy Guevara is a star on his own. Doesn't need to be there.
True. No, I think that's true. And, the thing is, I think Sammy Guevara has the ability to get himself over as a babyface. Right now, he's a heel. I think when he's a heel, I think he is probably just a little bit more comfortable working inside the shadow of Chris Jericho. And I don't necessarily know why he ends up going back to the JSA because, like you said, he's a star on his own. Let him kind of work through it. Let him figure it out. But he goes back to the JSA. JSA gets a new member, maybe two new members, because Ty Conti might be involved in this as well. But I thought the opening match that we had between Ortiz and Chris Jericho, hair versus hair. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I thought what you got from Eddie Kingston with his spinning back fist was great. I thought at the very end when Ortiz was shaving his head, he ends up nicking his scalp. He's got blood everywhere, and he's streaming blood down his face. And he's like, blood and guts, blood and guts, blood and guts. And you've got William Regal on commentary basically saying that's what a man does. I think Ortiz in that moment really helped get himself more over. I think you and I both, huge fans. You're a huge fan of Santana and Ortiz. I think in that exact moment right there, Ortiz really helped elevate himself. What did you think about the way that match finished, the hair versus hair match between Ortiz and Chris Jericho, especially when Ortiz, like I said, clipping his own hair, he's got the blood coming down, and he's just screaming in the microphone.
Yeah, it was great. Absolutely, like you said, elevating a star, and that's what Chris Jericho's doing. That's what you need from the WWE, is to have your established stars like an AJ Styles really get over the likes of an Austin Theory, really get over the likes of The Miz. I mean, the WWE, that's what happens when, unfortunately, you don't have a really strong creative direction. You don't exactly have the opportunity to move things along. Chris Jericho is just doing that for others as well, including the likes of having Eddie Kingston in the mix and things like that, running down and trying to, help his buddy out. And in the end, Chris Jericho, and I think everybody knew, even though people knew what the outcome was going to be, I think the match in and of itself really lived up to the billing. And then, which was awesome, it led up into, I thought, one of the best wrestling matches of the year. I really liked the match with Will Ospreay. I thought it was a professional wrestling match with smoothness, execution. It was quality at the highest level. And everyone knows Will Ospreay is talented. But unless you do it on American television, sometimes it goes unnoticed, unless you're a hardcore wrestling fan that looks on Twitter. And you got to remember, we've talked about Will Ospreay battling on Twitter with the likes of Seth Rollins and others for years. But if that's the quality that Will Ospreay can display on television, WWE's got to open the bank and just say, we'll break all your contracts, we'll give you whatever you want, bring Will Ospreay to WWE and just let him go. Intercontinental Championship reign, full personality, full control. Let him do what he can do. The man can move. The man can sell. You look like you want to watch him. He's a professional wrestler. And I just felt like a lot of the attention that was given, but you got to give credit as well to FTR. Giving them the opportunity to have wrestling matches individually has also allowed them to really get over their brand, and you can't discount what they can do in the ring. And shame on
Dax
WWE
Harwood
for not recognizing what they could do. It was a great match. I loved every second of it, and of course, Ospreay's supposed to get over.
Yeah, no, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Dax held up his end of the bargain. He looked incredible.
More than. Woo.
Yes, absolutely. Like, he's been doing some great work, some absolutely incredible work. Remember going back to the Owen Hart Tournament Championship Cup, like going back to that, he's been doing fantastic work. So this was a match where their styles collided, and it really helped elevate everything you've seen. I thought it was a fantastic match, like you said. I thought the way it broke down at the very, very end was absolutely incredible, and we get the return of Orange Cassidy. In Orange Cassidy versus Will Ospreay at Forbidden Door. This was a match I never knew I wanted to see until I had both these guys standing in the ring. I can't wait for this match. This match gets me so excited because it is just flippy shit, and it is just big spots, and it is just going to be absolute madness. Does Orange Cassidy, Will Ospreay at Forbidden Door get you as pumped up as I am?
Oh, yeah. Everybody wants to see it. When the music hit, everybody was like, yes.
I was so pumped
into our veins. We want to see it.
I was so pumped. Look, I like I said, I really thought Dynamite was absolutely fantastic. I do want to put a pin in something that you said. It made me realize something that we kind of skipped when we were talking WWE, and I want to come back to it next week. But with Stephanie McMahon in control of WWE, I want to talk about how things will kind of change, or how we expect things to change in WWE. So I want to put a pin in that. We can come back to that next week. We'll tease that for next week. We'll talk about that. But I do want you to kind of ruminate about that for about a week, and let's come up with some ideas on what we think might take place with WWE going forward. I like I said, again, fantastic Dynamite, capped off with a great ladders match. Now, Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy not involved in this ladders match like they were originally supposed to be. We're going to get into all of that with the news and notes, kind of tell you what's going on there. But we have new AEW tag champs as the Young Bucks beat Jurassic Express. Was this the right move?
See, here's the problem, okay? And of course, we have now the backdrop that I've already read the reactions and kind of seen it. And I guess I have to agree with it, but I have to acknowledge that the opinions of others has also swayed my opinion. When you see one Young Bucks match, you kind of seen them all. Mm-hmm. So it's spot, and go, which is fine. But when you've seen it repeatedly, they're the best tag team among the best in AEW. I can understand it, especially when you want to now shift, you want to shift Jungle Boy into another feud in the turn. But I'll say this. That segment was the lowest rated segment. The audience turned it off. It's very weird. I wouldn't have expected that. When you look at the breakdown of the ratings after the first hour, I don't know, people got their fill of wrestling and were like, oh, I'm good, and put their pants back on and went on their merry way. I know they're going up against the playoffs and other stuff, but the lowest rated segment was the tag match. That's not really great when you are looking at trying to move things forward. So that has to play into it. I'm just personally, like I said, what the Young Bucks do deserves credit. I'm just more of a fan of FTR, more of a fan of traditional tag teams, and not more of the Lucha Libre style of tag team where it's like boom, 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 boom. Hi, I'm more into the tags, the psychology, the who's in and who's out kind of thing. Obviously Heart Foundation, Demolition, things like that. This is just, frenetic. And I think that maybe you're working to a crescendo, but maybe that should be the top of the second hour instead of the main event. So that's the way I'd look at it. Maybe all I would have done differently was then have Dax and Will finish the show, and you have people going apeshit. So that might have paced it out where you have good beginning, good top of the second hour, and great main event. Might have been a way to switch it up, but I'm just me personally, not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I kind of thought that would be how you would pace that out if you had the ability to kind of book that. Now, the reason I think this might be the right move, and this was something I expected the ending of this match. I expected the Young Bucks to take the title off of Jurassic Express, and the reason for that is if the Hardys were involved in this, I could see the Hardys coming away as the new champions. But it was time to get the belts off of Jurassic Express. It doesn't really feel like they've highlighted those belts. It doesn't really feel like they're even the best tag team in their division. I mean, it really feels like FTR is probably the best tag team. Young Bucks are 1B. So Jurassic Express probably somewhere right around third, fourth best tag team in their division. So it doesn't feel like they were worthy of holding those titles any longer. Also, remember what we've got coming up. We've got Forbidden Door coming up. It's a big crossover pay-per-view with New Japan. New Japan's audience is much more familiar with the Young Bucks as they've worked in New Japan. They were part of the Bullet Club. They've done stuff overseas. They have a bigger name. Putting the belts on the Young Bucks for this pay-per-view, I think, draws more eyes to it, helps create more of a crossover between both fan bases, and you can do some things with the Young Bucks and either the Bullet Club or other feuding factions in New Japan. I think what we're going to get here is you've seen Switchblade come out, you've seen Switchblade attack Hangman Page. I wouldn't be surprised if Switchblade calls out, because you've seen Adam Cole wanted to face Switchblade. I wouldn't be surprised if Switchblade, who is the new IWGP champion, ends up taking on Kenny Omega, or Kenny Omega shows up and challenges Switchblade. Don't be surprised if that happens. This seems to, right now, we're getting a revival in New Japan of Bullet Club. For a while, Bullet Club has kind of laid, I don't want to say dormant, but they really hit a peak when they had Kenny Omega, they had the Young Bucks, and then they went to AEW. And Bullet Club kind of came back down, and it just kind of had this slow simmer. You're getting a bit of a revival of that. They're coming back up, and they're becoming one of the more popular factions in New Japan. Don't be surprised if this entire card for Forbidden Door is dominated by the Bullet Club / the Elites. because it's just kind of the way that I see this possibly going. And it just really feels like New Japan is, again, pushing Bullet Club, and you've got a ton of old Bullet Club guys who are now the elite in AEW, and we could have a collision of worlds here. I think that's kind of how this plays out. So I think that was why it was the best reason to take those belts off of Jurassic Express, put them on the Young Bucks. Also, sets up for what we got, what we've been waiting for. Christian finally turns on Jungle Boy. What did you make of Christian finally turning on Jungle Boy, hitting him with a concerto in the middle of the ring, and then going and telling his mom and his sister that they raised a piece of shit?
Yeah,
which I find to be funny.
Yeah, finally we can have some interest in Christian. I think it'll do. This is how it needs to be done. Jungle Boy needs to get over on Christian, and we can move forward. It's great. You get renewed passion in Christian, who's kind of become stale. And this is what we needed, and I'm looking forward to it, and I can't wait to see it. And then I think the thing that everybody was kind of left buzzing after Rampage was, did we get the return of the Crow Sting? Is this the right thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, he came back down, had his black leather trench coat on. He kind of looked and he kind of moved like he was the pissed off old Sting that would come parachuting in and hit you with a baseball bat. It kind of felt like we got the Crow Sting, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know if it's more it felt that way or if it's more of me just being incredibly hopeful that we get the old Crow Sting. But that was the one thing from Rampage that really made me sit up and take notice. I hope we get the return of the Crow Sting. It'll be fantastic if he kind of has that attitude, that swagger. Not so much Grandpa Sting, who's kind of moving around with Darby Allin, but we get that old badass who will just parachute in, hit you with a baseball bat, and we call it a day. So I hope we get that guy back. What was your show of the week this week?
It highlighted by some great wrestling. It was Dynamite. I thought it was great all the way through. Even though you might not like some of the angles in wrestling, I thought it flowed smoothly into what was trying to be told. So Dynamite for me.
Yeah, for me, it was Dynamite as well. You want some wrestling news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
So like we talked about, the Hardys were removed from the tag team ladder match on Wednesday. Well, that's because Jeff Hardy finds himself in a little bit more trouble. If you followed Detroit Podcast on Twitter, or if you followed me, Adam RSGROZ on Twitter, we kind of posted about this. We kind of talked about it briefly. You should always follow us and should always interact with us. We'll interact with you. But All Elite Wrestling has suspended Jeff Hardy without pay following his arrest on charges of driving under the influence in Florida. AEW President Tony Khan said Tuesday that Hardy can only return to AEW upon successfully completing treatment and maintaining his sobriety. Hardy's most recent arrest for the alleged DUI was his third in 10 years, and his substance abuse is well documented. You can view the uncomfortable arrest video on TMZ as they obtained the dash cam footage. Basically, Hardy said that he had 2 or 3 double shots of Fireball. He said he was on the way for a brain scan. Remember, Hardy dealing with a lot of injuries here since coming into AEW, really putting some high-profile, big spot matches where there's been a lot of crashing and burning that's kind of taken place. And whether it is the pain from dealing with those injuries that has led to his drinking, or if it's just, again, he's an alcoholic and he's fallen off the wagon yet again. Jeff Hardy, again, making bad decisions and getting caught driving. Also, he has a suspended license, and he's only supposed to be in a vehicle that is hooked up to a breathalyzer. So he broke a lot of rules, and Jeff Hardy finds himself in quite a bit of trouble yet again. Now, Becky Lynch busted up Dana Brooke on Monday night. Dana took to Twitter to show the images of her face being bruised by the assault from Lynch. Lynch and Brooke were scheduled to have a 24/7 title match on Raw, but Big Time Bex instead used it as an opportunity to take out some of her frustrations on Brooke by attacking her and cutting a scathing promo after. Dana Brooke's face has bruising all over the forehead, her cheeks, and her nose. It was absolutely bonkers to see what actually took place with Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch might have got a little bit too carried away. Now, Cody Rhodes is the guy in the immediate future of WWE. WWE former chairman Vince McMahon reportedly views Cody Rhodes as the potential face of the company moving forward. According to Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer Newsletter, it was McMahon who made the call for Rhodes to defeat Seth Rollins at Hell in the Cell, despite the fact that Rhodes was dealing with a torn pectoral muscle. Meltzer noted that a wrestler typically loses before undergoing surgery and taking significant time off to recover, but the fact that Rhodes won speaks to how he is viewed in WWE by the higher-ups. Now, Meltzer also reported on Wrestling Observer Radio that WWE filmed the entirety of Cody Rhodes' pectoral surgery for an inclusion in a feature documentary. The American Nightmare is going to be in a full-blown babyface mode upon his return to the company following his rehab. The company will likely also film Rhodes' days leading up to his epic performance inside Hell in a Cell against Seth Rollins. This particular episode of WWE 24 should be great, so you'll want to check that out on the Peacock Network. And has WWE come to terms with a superstar? So some questioning things kind of coming out this week. Raj Giri of Wrestling Inc. reported late Wednesday night that former Raw, SmackDown, and NXT Women's Champion Sasha Banks has been released from her contract with WWE. Banks and Naomi walked out of WWE over creative frustrations during the May 16th episode of Raw and were immediately suspended without pay. Updates regarding the situation were far and few between, but the company worked overtime to paint the boss and her teammate as unprofessional and having let down the fans. If the 30-year-old is finished with the company, WWE will have managed to let a mainstream star walk away. Now, what it sounds like is it's not so much WWE looking to cut ties with her. WWE wants to keep her frozen, but it sounds like Sasha Banks' attorneys are working to get her contract expedited and overturned and get her out of it. So we'll have to continue to watch. WWE hasn't really given any comment on this, and things are still a little bit uncertain as to what is actually taking place with Sasha Banks, but it appears that she may have pushed her way out of her contract. So we'll have to wait and see. Now, the Legend Killer may be on the shelf for all of 2020. On Friday Night SmackDown, Matt Riddle cut a pretty good promo basically talking about Randy Orton and how he's possibly going to have surgery. Now, Randy Orton is dealing with a severe back injury, and WWE at this point is afraid that he may be sidelined through 2022, not returning until 2023. The thought is Orton needs to get back surgery, and if that is the case, the rest of this year will be over for Randy Orton. Now, Cowboy Bob Orton has basically stated that Randy's going to try rehab, but we'll see what happens. Orton's dealing with a very severe back injury right now. And now we all know what policy issue really means in WWE. Last week, former WWE NXT 2.0 star Troy Two Dimes Donovan was released from the company, and now we know why. Initially, it was reported that Donovan's release was due to a policy issue, which didn't really make sense or wasn't really an exact reason as to why he was being cut by NXT. Dave Meltzer helped clarify that Donovan was fired due to a failed drug test. Many people had suspected that the policy issue indicated that, but it hadn't been confirmed until now. Donovan was told by WWE head of talent relations, John Laurinaitis, if everything is clear in a year, he should apply for a job to return. So basically, he popped a couple of drug tests, and WWE was like, we got to let you go. And they said that if you can get your life figured out, you can come back. It's really, really weird because they do have the rehab and they do offer the sobriety treatment for a lot of the wrestlers. I'm not sure why they wouldn't do that for Two Dimes here. Very, very interesting. But that's going to be it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Make sure anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, type in these 3 words, Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. Great wrestling analysis. This hour flew by. Woo! Lots to get into next week. Yeah, absolutely. The role of Stephanie McMahon, how AEW is going to play out, working towards Blood and Guts. Lots to get into. And it's always fun to check in with the supporters of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Podcasting time is
we
now
got Forbidden
coming
Door
to...
next week, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Podcasting time is now coming to a close. Thanks, everybody, for downloading the latest edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.